An article came out earlier in the campaign saying Trump isn't Hitler, he's Mussolini. The writer pointed out that Hitler was dogmatic. You always knew where he stood. He had a book he wrote in prison and never strayed or wavered from. Mussolini, on the other hand, was a man you could never pin down on anything. The man was a braggart. He used and encouraged the raw emotions of his followers, encouraging violence at his rallies. He was well educated and knew philosophy, but knew how to speak to the angry people who confused loss of entitlement with disenfranchisement. The people were rightfully angry as they had been given a raw deal, but he was able to direct their anger in the wrong, naive direction that worked against their own self-interest. Trump did the exact same thing, seeming to use common sense and telling it like it was. Two buzzwords that, if you hear, should immediately give you red flags, as both the Nazis and the communists use them in propaganda. Trump is viewed by mostly older white men as a man of the people, even though he hasn't gone grocery shopping on his own in decades. I find this use of visceral anger, discontentedness, and naivety in a place I used to hold almost sacred as a young man. That person being Tyler Durden. As a young, socially inept Christian with depression, always striving for perfection, the movie Fight Club was an eye-opener to a different way to view the world. Even the Mona Lisa's falling apart was so different from aiming to be the perfect person. It didn't in any way, shape, or form make me an atheist. Science did that, but it gave me a completely different perspective on life that actually led me into studying Buddhism and Taoism once the religion is gone, as well as fomenting my views on anti-materialism. An interesting thing to note about the author Chuck Palahniuk is that he, at least when he wrote the book, was a rather strong anti-feminist over a decade before the men's rights movement hit it big on the internet. He claimed that there wasn't any literature written for men, even though the market at the time was mostly male writers, and by that he meant there weren't hyper-masculinity books, even though every other media was all about that. The book inadvertently captures everything that is wrong with the white male of the late 90s, materialistic, self-indulgent, and trying to find a cause to fight for that their parents and grandparents had idealized, like the Great War and the Great Depression. Boredom was their biggest enemy, completely ignoring women's and minority rights issues and labor fights that could have prevented the collapse of the middle class. They liked the idea of burn it all down because they were bored. Everything in that book or movie were white men with a couple token black dudes in the background of the movie. Women were almost non-existent except as a background character, sad, broken, or pathetic, or meddling. Mind you, no one in his books is a good person. Why Tyler arising to call these bored, materialistic, castrated men to rise up, create a men's-only group, created a terror network Al-Qaeda would copy, though most likely from research Palahniuk got his ideas from. All with the end goal of burning all the materialistic society down and living like hunter-gatherers, ignoring completely wars and starvation that would occur because our industrialized networks and machining is the only way the population level we have now could survive at all. Cannibalism would be huge. He used people's visceral emotions to ignore real problems and injustice and direct their privileged entitlement disillusionment to attack the hand that feeds them, which they could have worked hard to make better and instead tried to burn it all down out of boredom and some bizarre noble savage ideal. The 90s was ripe for revolution, but instead we went to the mall. Now, backing away from the movie, while the book and movie takes itself seriously, the writer really doesn't. Everyone is broken, crazy, trapped, and sad. The story injects some good philosophy into it, as well as the absurdity of the human condition and idealisms of perfection. I have a feeling I will be able to enjoy it and relate to it again a bit more if and when the economy picks back up, and being bored from having too much money and things is the worst problem possible. Of course, Palahniuk went on to write more books that became less and less coherent and philosophical, and became just books of disgusting and disturbing facts with very weak story to hang on to it, including a rather anti-transsexual ambiguous positions on gays called Invisible Monsters. While addressing some of the extreme weirdness in the gay and trans community, it ends up painting a picture of the majority as being such. This tell it like it is badass, and the truth started unwittingly with comedians, Sam Kinison and George Carlin, pushing the boundaries of decency and questioning the very conformist facade of America. People like Bill Hicks questioning the norms around drugs, music, government, prison, and autofellatio. Comedians questioning the norms of society and push the boundaries of the sacred. They were skeptics without any real methodology to control for bias, and they were completely oblivious that such things existed. They were so rare and under attack. They attacked anything, good or bad, mostly strawmanning the good, like feminism, because they didn't actually do the research on why such ideas were considered good, and just heard the echo chamber distortions. Bill Maher and Dennis Leary cut their teeth on this. The skeptic movement pushed even more forward, and Penn and Teller made bullshit, which was 50% asking experts and 50% taking what they already believed and strawmanning the other side, even if the other side had experts, though they didn't consider them real experts because they were often from, gasp, social sciences, which Penn flat out told me he didn't believe was legitimate. From that comedy came a tell-it-like-it-is honest brashness that can be refreshing if based in truth. However, something that Trump, Mussolini, and Tyler have in common is they knew how to speak to their audience and that culture. Mussolini knew that the Italian people would view him as more respectable because he knew philosophy, and was a very knowledgeable individual. Tyler Durden spoke to the heart of the white man, bored corporate office drone like no one could. His use of knowledge, random facts, and philosophy made him seem like an authority figure. Trump, on the other hand, aimed for a particular culture where facts, big words, and philosophy are looked down on and despised. This war is a culture war. People must take a stand on something even if they have no idea what it is. Bathroom bills, immigration, TPP, gun control, foreign policy, terrorism, war on Christmas. Most of his followers aren't informed enough to have any real opinion on this, but the people around them do, so that means they must firmly fight in the culture war on that. Facts don't matter, which made his job so much easier, so long as he has the right flavor of swagger akin to those tell-it-like-it-is comedians. He just has to say the right buzzwords and catchphrases, and he, like a pack leader, has signal enough that he is one of them, and they won't question a damn thing he says. They make all the same logical twists and backflips to defend him that religious apologists do when cornered, and nothing you say will change their mind. He blasphemes all the cultural norms for the sake of blasphemy, including veterans' parents, and they love it. He is endorsed by white supremacists, and they don't care. They have chosen their leader who is cocky and badass to them, and logic and facts will never penetrate. We have seen this in history before, with our rights and well-being on the line. If his big speech about immigration didn't send chills down your spine as you heard what has always been a declaration of war on freedom, then there is nothing more that can be said to you. He will appoint judges that will remove civil rights of women and voting and civil rights for minorities. I wrote this script before the election happened. The only possible resilience to this kind of rhetoric is crushing defeat so the other side knows that is unacceptable in this great nation of ours. Since he's been elected, the rise of homicide as well as suicide, abuse, and fear among anybody who's not white and male has gone up dramatically. We must fight what he stands for. Stand up and fight for your fellow citizen of Earth. And please, please, please vote in 2 years. As you saw, not voting really does change things.